Among the many psychological types described by Carl Gustav Jung, one stands apart, not only because it is rare, but because it carries within it a uniquely complex psychic life. This is the intuitive introvert. Jung himself said this personality type is among the most difficult to truly understand, both by others and by the person themselves. Why? Because this type does not live primarily in the external world of facts, actions, or obvious emotions. Instead, they inhabit a realm beneath the surface, a symbolic inner world flowing directly from the unconscious. They are guided by inner images, premonitions, and archetypal patterns that escape everyday perception. This person's compass is not logic or direct observation, but an inner sensitivity to invisible meanings that have yet to take shape. Imagine a person who senses the shadows of things to come, who perceives psychic movements before they even become conscious. For the intuitive introvert, the visible world, with its practical demands, deadlines, and rigid rules, often feels trivial, even irrelevant. Not out of arrogance, but because their attention is fixed on something deeper, a symbolic dimension that often predicts the future before it unfolds. Jung described this type as someone who perceives what is about to be, but is not yet. Their perception is oriented towards potential, psychic seeds, and what is quietly forming in the collective unconscious. This gives them an uncanny sensitivity to cultural, spiritual, and existential shifts that others only see after the fact. But this powerful sensitivity comes at a cost. The world around them runs on a different frequency. Society demands proof, measurable results, and objective data. What the intuitive introvert perceives is often intangible, invisible, at least initially. This creates a painful abyss between their inner visions and external expectations. More often than not, their perceptions are ignored, ridiculed, or misunderstood. They might intuit something essential about a person they just met or sense the rupture in the air before a major event unfolds. Yet when they try to communicate this, they often face silence or rejection. Over time, many learn to hold their insights inward, turning their inner world into a private, impenetrable space. And here lies the danger. Jung warned that if the intuitive introvert cannot find ways to translate these visions into language, art, or concrete action, they risk being consumed by them. The rich symbolic images that should be sources of revelation can instead become prisons. When symbols remain unintegrated, they can start to dominate the psyche autonomously. The individual stops observing these images and instead becomes possessed by them. This is the dark side of intuition, a dissociative process that can spiral into confusion or madness. In this series, we will explore this fascinating and complex psychic type. We will uncover how the intuitive introvert functions, what unique dangers they face, and, most importantly, the immense transformative potential they carry when they find paths to expression and integration. The journey of the intuitive introvert is not easy. It is a journey between worlds, the visible and invisible, the conscious and unconscious. But understanding this crossing can illuminate not only those who live this psychic reality, but also anyone seeking to grasp the deeper mysteries of the human soul. If this resonates with you, or if you're curious to dive deeper, stay tuned for the next part where we explore how introverted intuition works, how it perceives not the world outside, but the vast inner world of symbols and premonitions that guide the intuitive introvert's vision. To truly understand the intuitive introvert, we first need to understand the nature of their primary psychic function: introverted intuition. In Jung's typology, intuition is one of the so-called irrational functions, meaning it perceives without relying on logic or direct sensory data. But what sets the introverted intuitive apart is the direction of this perception. It's turned deeply inward. Unlike extroverted intuition, which explores possibilities in the external world, scanning the environment for new opportunities. The introverted intuitive dives into the depths of the unconscious. They don't see with the eyes of the body, but with what Jung called the eyes of the soul. This function picks up raw psychic images, symbols, archetypes, and premonitions that float up from archaic layers of the psyche. Often these images arrive without warning, context, or clear explanation. To an outsider, they may seem like disconnected or even bizarre thoughts. But for the intuitive introvert, these are profound signals, laden with meaning. Think of their mind as an antenna tuned inward, sensing waves of psychic energy that have no direct language but carry immense form, weight, and significance. This constant contact with symbolic images means they experience the world differently. What looks like a normal situation to others may reveal hidden tensions, invisible patterns, or silent repetitions to them. They perceive the story beneath the story. When this sensitivity is well integrated, it becomes a powerful source of insight. The intuitive introvert can grasp the unconscious motivations behind people's behavior, sense upcoming shifts in culture or society, and foresee the subtle unfolding of events long before anyone else notices. But this gift also makes them vulnerable. The sensation function, which connects us to the here and now, through our bodies and the material world, is often underdeveloped in this type. Because of this, the intuitive introvert can lose touch with immediate reality. When intuition operates unchecked, it begins to run autonomously, untethered from everyday experience. The individual drifts deeper into an ocean of internal images and symbols that are not consciously chosen, but emerge from psychic necessity. This inner world is not random chaos. Rather, it is a complex architecture of symbols that arise spontaneously. When properly directed, these images can become seeds of creativity, ideas that transform, heal, and reveal hidden truths. But if left unprocessed, they become psychic noise, overwhelming the mind and causing confusion, indecision, and a collapse of rational thought. The intuitive introvert can begin to live in a parallel reality of their own making, one where symbolic images drown out the practical facts of life. For anyone with this function dominant, the first step toward psychic survival is learning to distinguish genuine insight from baseless fantasy. This is not easy. It requires time, silence, and the cultivation of an internal structure to hold the visions without being swept away by them. But it also comes with a warning. No matter how captivating this internal world may be, it holds many traps. In the next part, we will delve into these traps, especially the moment when symbolic vision, without expression, twists into delusion and the psyche begins to unravel. If this part is connecting with you, please subscribe to the channel to not miss the upcoming exploration of the dangers and potentials of this psychic type. Introverted intuition has a quality that makes it both fascinating and dangerous. It does not operate in the present moment. Instead, it is always reaching forward, sensing what is about to happen, but has not yet arrived. This psychic threshold existence means the intuitive introvert lives on the edge between the now and the not yet. They perceive the subtle shifts, the archetypal changes in the psychic and cultural landscape before these become visible or concrete to others. Because of this, Jung compared them to prophets, people who see what others cannot see. But this prophetic vision carries a profound dilemma. What they see cannot be proven. What they feel cannot be justified with facts. And what they intuit rarely finds recognition or resonance in others. This creates a painful tension between the clarity of their inner vision and the skepticism or outright rejection of the outside world. Often, the intuitive introvert begins to doubt their own perceptions, or alternatively, they may cling so absolutely to their inner knowing that they reject the external world altogether. both paths are dangerous. This ongoing conflict between the unseen inner truth and the denied visible reality slowly eats away at the psyche. Jung illustrated this with a powerful example. A patient who, during therapy, described an image of a black snake lodged deep inside her abdomen. As therapy progressed, the snake seemed to rise up inside her, finally emerging from her mouth and transforming into a golden-headed serpent. To many, this would seem like a wild fantasy. But Jung understood this image as a symbol of profound inner transformation, a visual representation of the process of individuation. The black snake represented repressed material within her unconscious. When integrated, it was reborn as a healing symbol, the golden serpent. This story perfectly captures how introverted intuition works, not through logic or cause and effect, but through symbolic imagery revealing destiny and transformation. The trouble begins when these images cannot be translated into language, art, or concrete action. When symbols stay trapped inside the mind, they stop being guides and start becoming prisons. The mind loses the ability to distinguish insight from illusion. What was once symbolic wisdom can turn into solitary delirium. The boundary between revelation and madness is razor thin, and the intuitive introvert walks this tightrope every day. To avoid falling into this psychic labyrinth, it's essential to recognize the signs of rupture with reality. In the next part, we will explore exactly how this breakdown happens, how symbols begin to dominate the psyche completely, leading to what Jung called archetypal inflation and the loss of grounding in reality. The intuitive introvert is naturally a solitary figure, not by choice, but by psychic structure. Their attention is drawn to what cannot be seen, what has not yet taken form, what emerges from the unconscious in the form of symbols, visions, and premonitions. But this deep inner focus can become a trap when it lacks expression or connection to the external world. Jung described a dangerous process called inflatio, the swelling or inflation of the ego by unconscious archetypal content. What does this mean? As the intuitive introvert perceives profound symbolic patterns, they may begin to feel chosen for a special mission, a kind of psychic uniqueness. At first, this is a natural reflection of their sensitivity. But if left unchecked, it can morph into a messianic illusion, the belief that one is a bearer of absolute truths, a rejected visionary, or a prophet misunderstood by a blind society. Criticism is not seen as feedback, but as persecution. Doubt from others becomes proof of their inferiority. This creates a dangerous cycle of isolation. The individual retreats further into their inner world, convinced that no one understands them because they are somehow more evolved. This kind of psychic inflation erodes self-criticism. The person starts living entirely within their own symbolic narrative, unable to distinguish between archetypal content and everyday reality. They may identify with grand images from the unconscious, the wise one, the martyr, the prophet, and lose touch with their basic humanity. This over-identification causes psychic fragmentation. What was once a source of insight becomes a means of escape. Practical life is neglected. Relationships become tools rather than connections. Any contradiction to the inner vision is rejected as a threat. Jung observed this pattern often in people who emotionally isolate themselves and resist adapting to the world. But the real danger, he warned, is not the isolation itself. It's what comes next, the complete takeover of consciousness by the unconscious. When this happens, the ego stops mediating reality. It becomes a passive vessel for symbolic images, no longer filtering or judging them. Perception distorts. Reality becomes contaminated. The person drifts into a subtle, delirious fantasy where everything seems meaningful, but nothing is grounded. Yet this need not be the end. There is an antidote. The key to psychic survival for the intuitive introvert is symbolic expression. The ability to transform the invisible into form, whether through art, writing, music, or ritual. When the symbolic vision finds a way out into the world, it stops being a prison and becomes a source of creation. In the next part, we'll explore how great intuitive introverts like Kafka, Van Gogh, and Jung himself channeled their visions into powerful works that transformed not only themselves, but entire cultures. If you're finding this journey insightful, stay with us and subscribe to catch the next installment, The Healing Power of Symbolic Expression. The psychic survival of the intuitive introvert depends greatly on their ability to translate the invisible into form. Jung taught us that unexpressed symbols become autonomous forces within the psyche, foreign bodies that have not been digested by consciousness. The only way to integrate these powerful internal images is to give them a shape in the outside world. Symbolic expression, whether through art, writing, music, or ritual, is not merely an aesthetic luxury. It is a vital psychological necessity. This act of translating inner visions into concrete form is what separates the creative visionary from the fragmented mystic. When the intuitive introvert finds a way to externalize their perceptions, they turn their symbolic solitude into communication, their strangeness into language, their isolation into influence. What was once a private labyrinth becomes a map that others can follow. This process of creation has a double benefit. First, it releases internal psychic tension. Second, it offers the collective access to unconscious contents that would otherwise remain hidden. History is rich with examples of individuals who most likely operated predominantly through introverted intuition. Consider Franz Kafka. His complex, dreamlike writings channel his symbolic alienation and reveal the absurdity lurking beneath modern existence. Vincent van Gogh poured his emotional and symbolic vision into explosive brushstrokes, each painting a desperate attempt to capture the boiling storm of his soul. And Jung himself, deeply aware of this psychic function in his own life, wrote his most profound works as efforts to translate complex internal experiences into understandable systems. These examples show that symbolic expression is the vital bridge between the inner and outer worlds. When this bridge is absent, symbols accumulate, close in on themselves, and distort perception. But when there is a channel for expression, the internal image becomes work, gesture, or word, reorganizing the psyche. The intuitive function stops operating in darkness and begins to cooperate with consciousness. In this sense, creativity is not simply a gift, it is a profound process of psychological integration. However, even the richest symbolic expression can fall short without grounding in reality. By their nature, intuitive introverts tend to neglect the body, routine, and concrete limits. This exposes them to new risks. Creation can become compulsion. Inspiration can turn into escape. True integration occurs only when symbolic expression is balanced by sensory grounding. In the next part, we will explore how simple practices connected to the body and the earth serve as powerful antidotes to psychic dissolution. Even when the intuitive introvert develops symbolic expression and builds practices to anchor themselves in reality, they face perhaps the most difficult challenge: living their truth in a world that rejects what cannot be measured or seen. Modern culture is obsessed with the concrete, the immediate, and the measurable. It values productivity, data, objective results, and visible performance. Deep intuitions, symbolic visions, and silent reflections are not just ignored, they are often ridiculed, pathologized, or dismissed as irrelevant. For the intuitive introvert, this creates an ongoing tension. How do you remain faithful to your inner soul when society demands conformity? How do you continue listening to silent symbols when the world demands constant action and proof? This tension appears in the details of everyday life. in conversations where you must silence your deepest thoughts, in workplaces where your insights feel out of place, in social settings where your quietness is misunderstood as weakness. The choice seems stark. Betray your inner vision to fit in, or remain true to yourself and risk misunderstanding, isolation, even loneliness. But this is not a call to resignation. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires exactly this: sustaining your symbolic core amid the forces of the collective. Living your symbolic truth as an intuitive introvert is not withdrawal from the world. It is navigating through it without losing your internal axis. It means accepting that your vision may never be fully recognized but still needs to be lived. Because the purpose of intuition is not to convince or to win. It is to point toward paths not yet walked. Living symbolically in a materialistic society is a silent act of resistance. It is choosing depth over surface, meaning over convenience. It is holding a connection to the invisible even when everything around you denies its value. And when you find the courage to remain true, you become a transformative figure, not by forcing your vision on others, but by revealing through your very presence that there is more beneath the surface. This subtle revelation has the power to touch, disturb, and inspire those ready to perceive it. If you feel that you belong to this invisible world, that you live among symbols, intuitions, and premonitions that few understand, please share your experiences in the comments. How have you navigated this crossing? What strategies help you stay whole? How do you balance your inner world with the demands of external reality? Your story may be a light for others walking this silent, complex path. Thank you for joining this deep exploration of the intuitive introvert. For those interested, the next video will continue this journey and offer even more keys to understanding and embracing this unique psychic type. See you there.